So, in a moment, we're going to be talking about CPD submission with less sweat. And I'm just absolutely delighted to have Natalie agree to be our guest speaker today. She does a fantastic job at AMV and, interestingly, has come from client side where she was in HR. So she brings a lot of very, very good knowledge from there. Thank you so much. And then, once we've finished this session, which we hope will give you at least 2 tips each of things you can do to make CPD submission with less sweat, we're going to hear briefly from Michael about all the courses that have run this year and our ambition for next year. Kate is going to talk about qualifications. Indra is going to launch our LinkedIn group. Now, one of the things we're doing today is obviously we're filming this session, first of all, so that it's open for people who are unable to come to London to see this or unable to come on the day. And the LinkedIn group is going to be so much more. I'm going to talk to you about how when we change the IPA site next, we are going to create something called the CPD Managers Hub. And basically, I'm going to make sure that everything that you need is in the one place. And we'll show you what that's going to look like. So Matt and I are working on that at the moment. You'll all have had an opportunity to see the beautiful work that has been done by Matt on basically our first ever proof that CPD is effective for your business. And I would just like to thank right now all the agencies that have contributed to that, some of whom are in the room, and we are hoping to do it again next year. More on that later. We'll talk about all the other things that are coming up, and then we're going to eat. Fantastic.
Yeah, so thanks everyone for coming today. As I said earlier, my name's Natalie Broome. I'm the Learning and Development Manager at AMV BBDO. And today I'm going to be talking with Gwyn and Indra about what the CPD submission is, just to remind you if you haven't started it all yet. Also why we do it, but also how we can make life easier for ourselves now, but also in the future. I am by no means a CPD submission expert at all. It's actually my first year for completing the CPD submission, but I've put a few things in place. I've got a few tips that I'd like to share with you today, which hopefully you'll find useful for yourselves. Someone that I'm going to pass over to now though is Gwyn, who is much more experienced.
This is me in November 1999, sat in this room where Gemma is now. And I was like a rabbit in the headlights because Rupert Howell and the big brass announced that the industry was going to adopt something called the Continuous Professional Development Standard, CPD. And I realized very quickly in their discussions that most of the work was going to get done by me. And this was quite a frightening moment, I have to say, particularly since they thought that we were going to become a professional industry by tea time. And I was pretty certain that it was actually going to be more like 15 to 20 years. However, very quickly, I became a happy bunny because I realized that this was an opportunity to get my management to actually talk to me. That basically they would be able to link business goals with development goals for the first time. And I would be able to go to them and say that unless you do this, we are not going to be able to keep our IPA membership. So I was actually, at that point, very happy. And I thought, this is going to be really worth the effort. Just to remind everyone about the standard, there were very good reasons why we put this in as a minimum threshold. Because, frankly, this was the sort of thing that our clients did without pausing for thought. It would never have occurred to them that we didn't do something like this. And this was also the minimum that all the other professions put in place. And when you look at it, it's actually not very much to ask for, is it? So, you know, having an induction program. The industry, however, was very, very sporadic. So Natalie, how do you introduce CPD?
Yeah, so I found when I first joined AMV, I mentioned the word CPD and a lot of people would just look at me really blankly and be like, what is CPD? So I thought it'd be really good to actually educate people as soon as they step into the agency about what CPD is. So something that you might be doing already, but if not, might be something to consider is in people's inductions is actually introduce them to the topic of CPD, say what it is, say why it's important, say why we do it as well, in terms of keeping our membership for the IPA, but also for them to really think about what they're doing in terms of their own development. HR at AMV actually run the inductions for people. But what I do in their first week is catch up with every new starter at some point, just sit down with them, introduce myself, tell them about what I do, introduce them to CPD, and then really kind of set the expectation from the very beginning, from when they join the agency, in terms of what is expected of them in terms of CPD, whether that's getting at least 24 hours, which we'll come on to, but also logging their CPD activities as well, and in terms of how they do that, and just to let them know that I'm there for support if it's needed.
Thank you very much. So, you have 7 weeks to go. What should you be doing and when? Can you get some help from people? And what can go the way of all flesh? Because you can't do everything. Before we go any further, we'd like for you to give us your top tips at this stage. So if you were mentoring another CPD manager, what would be your advice to them today with 7 weeks to go? Give me some ideas, guys, of things they should be doing now in order to make submission with less sweat. What would help? Lucy?
Just make sure everyone's registered.
Very good. So if you're using the CPD diary system, has everybody got one? Very good. What else? What other advice would you give? Laura?
Pull together a team.
Team. Brilliant. Fantastic. And I think at McCann's there's quite a good name for the team generally, isn't it? The talent team or the knowledge team? The knowledge team. I thought that was a very good innovation, may I say. It's a very good idea. So yes, give the team a really positive ethos. What else do you think they should be doing at this stage? Jenny?
Bribing people with chocolates.
My favourite. Bribery. Thank you for that one, Jenny. We're going to go on to talk about bribery. Definitely. What else? What else should they be doing? Nigel? Very good. In a little while, Natalie will get you to write down all the things that you're proudest of. It's really important that you remind yourself that what you do is incredibly useful for your business. So yes, remind yourself of all the initiatives. This is particularly important, I think, for those of you who go for gold. Yeah, start thinking about it now, not on the 30th of January. Anything else that you think would be helpful? Emma? Metrics, lovely. So you've probably put in your strategic development plan some metrics by which you could show that your CPD activity contributed to the business. Now would be a good stage to check that you have got that. Very good, very good. Thank you so much, everyone. I've already said you cannot do everything. Now, on your tables, there should be an effective time management grid. This is really famous in the industry, guys. I've nicked this from Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a worldwide bestseller and genuinely has some great stuff in it. And I just want to talk to you about time management theory briefly and then get you to do an exercise. Basically, a core facet of time management is to recognize that you cannot do everything, at least not properly. The second thing that you need to realize is that some actions will produce far greater results than others. So we've all known spending 3 hours polishing a spreadsheet which we suspect no one reads, yeah? Or 3 hours putting together our gold submission, which is going to look fantastic on our CVs. Yeah, you can see how actually there might be a better use of your time. So what I would like you to do with the grid in front of you is just spend a couple of moments thinking about all the things that you think you have to do in order to get submission together. If you're going for gold, feel free to write down all the things you need to do for gold. try and decide which of the 4 boxes the actions go into. So if you could just spend a couple of moments thinking about that. Okay, so can I have a volunteer to give me something that's important and urgent right now? Anyone prepared to volunteer something?
Checking we've got at least on the account and just the leg weights.
Thank you. That's really good, Kate. Fantastic. So just, get started, have something to talk about, show the IPA that you are making progress on that. Very, very good idea. Box 2, something that's important but not yet got a gun to your head. Brilliant. Because if you're going for gold, these supporting materials are really very, very important, because your submission is judged entirely on the written evidence that your assessors see. And also, if you're just doing standard CPD submission, which we all have to do, if you are tapped on the shoulder and get a CPD progress review that takes place in February and March, you will be asked to provide these. So it's a very good idea to check that they're up to scrub right now while you've still got time to do something about it. Anyone got an urgent and not important? Anyone got one of those? Or a neither urgent nor important? Anyone prepared to volunteer that now they think about it? Bill?
Christmas.
Oh, that's going to be the wife, is it? Thank you very much. Just want to remind you what I said about the 80-20 rule. Let me just explain a little bit about it. The 80-20 rule is often known as the Pareto principle, and it's named after the Italian economist Pareto. And he noticed that 80% of his peas were coming from 20% of his pea plants. And he thought, oh, I wonder if this holds good in business. And probably all of you in the room are aware that 80% of your profits come from 20% of your nice clients who don't make a fuss and rebrief endlessly. So it holds good for you as well, that there will be certain things that you do that are going to produce much better results than others. And of course the trick is to try and identify those. If you do this exercise, usually they sit in box 2. So they are the big important things that if you could do them to a high standard would produce really good results. In other words, they're not in box 1 yet. So you do them while they're in box 2 and you're likely to get a far better result out of that. So if you've captured a few box 2s, really be thinking about, are they going to be the things that produce the good results for you? Okay, so moving on again to this week, there's a number of things that you need to do. In a moment, Indra will show you how you can do reports and what screen you go into. If you're using CPD diaries, you can chase people to log their hours, put in their appraisal day, and, as Kate has said, to get their leg regs up to scrub. There's still time to do that. If you're not using CPD diaries, you'll have your own system, and you need to chase all of this and make sure that it is registered somewhere. Now, we would advise at this stage that you chase them nicely. So one of the techniques I remember that was used years ago at WCRS is you would get a senior champion to update their CPD diary and then send a message round the agency or their team saying, hey, if I can do it, so can you. So you're still in chasing them nicely stage. There's some good stats that you can do to basically encourage people. There are 18,000 people who are diary users. 18,000. Yeah? I know that surprised me as well. And this is the bit I always really like, is that there's a button that you can press that deletes all the people who have left or are leaving. And it's fantastic if they are people who were a real pain in the neck and wouldn't do their CPD diary. And it's like being Blofeld in James Bond. Ha ha. So, the other thing that you've still got time to do is find out from department heads who hasn't had an appraisal. Because you actually still got time to remedy this. Yeah, they really could do it. And if not, what's your story to the IPA about how you're remedying it for next year? Okay, so Indra.
Yes, this is how your agency CPD users list looks like, and I will just quickly show you how to get into that. If you go to the IPA website, obviously, into training and CPD page and just click on Monitor My Agency Users. And I have launched this already. So here's the list. And this list will have everyone who has been registered with the IPA website with your agency email address. That could be some people who are missing from this list. That could be because they just joined the industry, so just make sure that they create a new account. There could be people who actually moved from a different agency. That way we can actually update their records so all the CPD history is intact. And there could be people, as Gwyn said, who already left. And there is a button, as Gwyn said, to remove them all. So I'll quickly show you where the buttons are. You will have a little sort of printout, your guide to this area. Gwyn will show it quickly. So it's a step-by-step guide how to do things. So there is a button which says Edit Users, and this button will basically, tell the system what department they are from, what job role they have, when they had the appraisal date, if you can't get them to actually input that themselves. You can also add the extended leave, so if somebody is on the maternity leave, you could just do that and recalculate the hours if they, for example, work part-time instead of full-time, because as you know, 24 hours is a pro rata, 24 hours, not the 24 hours for all. So yeah, an update. So here you go. And so you can actually view somebody's diary, and if there needs to be, although we don't encourage that, you can actually add the entries for those people who are really bad. But I do appreciate it's quite a lot of work, so don't do it if you can. You can also download the PDF diary for each individual person. If there is an appraisal, you can actually have that at hand to talk what the learning they did. And you can also remove the user. So there's the lovely reddish button to remove the user. And you can also all this report, and I can see that it's not very easily manageable. You can download it into the Excel spreadsheet, so you can work from that. And this list, you'll find all the IPA qualifications, and you can monitor people's progress and whether they passed. There is a little glitch at the moment, which we're working on, and will be sorted very shortly. So hopefully all the data will be feeding through. So yeah. That is it. Yes,
Are there any options to do like a bulk user upload for like an agency-wide training initiative that would save them having to input it?
I'm afraid not. That the individual will have to do that themselves.
But as we said, you could, if push came to shove, for the ones that just don't do it, you could do it for them. Or you could give that job to a lovely work placement person, which I think would be a better use of your time, may I say. One of the other things that I always found very useful was that there's buttons that you can click at the top that allow you to sort of rank them in terms of hours. So you can see immediately if there's anybody who hasn't inputted the right number of hours, and you happen to know that they've done loads of stuff, you can go and chase them. And I always found that function very, very useful. And again, I think you can put that on a spreadsheet and have it printed out. And I used to walk around the agency with my printout, nobbling those people who hadn't got the right number of hours as far as I was aware. However, you are allowed to keep your own records, and that has been the case for 3 years now, I believe, Patrick. So Natalie, that's what you do at AMV.
Yeah, so at AMV, a few years ago, there's a lot of people at AMV. We're over 400 employees at the moment. And so the CPD manager at the time was having a bit of a nightmare actually trying to get people to complete their CPD diaries, and was finding that she was going in and completing it for them. So they spoke to the IPA, and they very kindly said that we could set up our own spreadsheet where the CPD manager tracks all the CPD activity and the hours. It's quite a big task. This task now rests on my shoulders, so it's something that I'm going to be doing over the next few weeks. But this is just a screen grab of the spreadsheet that I've set up. This is just what I've done. You might have your own. This isn't necessarily what yours kind of should look like. But in the columns on the left, I've just got people's names, then we've got job title, their department, and then I list all the different CPD activity that's taken place and the associated hours. I've done it in Excel, so you literally just set up some formula, so you don't have to go out and with your calculator and think, okay, so how many hours is that in total? Excel does it all for you, but as long as you've got your template, the hard work's done, and it's literally just inputting that data. Because I set up a lot of the training that happens in AMV, I'm aware of what courses people go on, what programs they attend, and it just means that I can go straight into my spreadsheet and update it for them. There are other ways as well that I find out what CPD activity people do, but I think we're going to come on to that a little bit later.
Absolutely, thank you very much. And by the way, diaries and your own system do not need to be mutually exclusive. A lot of people need to be registered on the site so that they can access all the wonderful free learning and perhaps, you know, go on to do some related exams for qualifications. So it's not unusual for there to actually be in every agency quite a lot of diary users who are just keeping it for their own records, but that doesn't stop you having your own system if you wish to have it.
Yeah, we do encourage people to keep up their CPD diary on the IPA website for their own use. If they were to leave AMV, then they have a kind of document almost that tells them all the training that's happened over the last kind of few years or in their career. So we don't say don't do the CPD diary on the website, it's up to them if they do, but this is just a much easier way for me to kind of track what activity happens.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're getting into next week. Gosh, you had quite a lot to do this week, didn't you? And I'm hoping that important and not yet urgent was lunch. This is the point at which I think that you should be rereading your strategic development plan. Now, it may well be that you'd submitted that earlier to the IPA or not, but if you have done one and it still makes sense and it reflects roughly what you did, fill in the fourth column and that will then be ready to attach when your submission is made. However, it might be that you think, no, I can improve on this, or that it doesn't reflect exactly what happened. Everyone should have on the tables this, which is the case study on building a strategic development plan, which we've printed out from our latest online modules, which are how to plan a training program. We're going to rewrite the strategic development plan next year, but let me just talk you, for those of you who are very new to CPD, the 4 simple steps that you need to take in order to build a good strategic development plan. The first thing you need to think is, what does the business need? I would advise that you start with that. What does the business need? Then you think to yourself, okay, is there anything that CPD could do to help? And it will always just be a help. It will never be the only reason, for example, that you have won new business or retained staff. You're thinking about, can CPD make a contribution to this business need? Then you think about who is going to get these skills, this CPD activity. Be very, very specific with us about who it is that's going to need it. Now, and this is the one where quite understandably everyone gets a bit confused, what you then need to do is fill in how you can tell if the development activity will have helped the business goal. Yeah? Does that make sense? Now, this is the area that quite understandably people get a little bit confused about. We do have online modules on training effectiveness evaluation, but really what you need to be thinking about with this step is, how can I measure that CPD contributed to the success of the business goal? Not that the business goal was successful per se. What we want to know is, how are you going to tell if what you did helped in any way? Am I making sense? Yeah? Anyone got any questions about that? Some of you are veterans of the strategic development plan and others of you are new to this. So please, if you need any help on any of this, please contact Gus Annett or Matt Stavru or myself to discuss it. Okay, the next thing that we would advise you to do next week is to start to organise some events in order to get your leg regs passes up. And remember, leg regs is mandatory for the account director level for any agency producing content. You don't yet need to worry about the commercial certificate that will be relevant to all of you, but you will next year. And various ways that you can do that. I mean, J. Walter Thompson have done pizza blitz evenings, where they've just plied everyone with pizza and sat them there and said, study. And some of them have even managed to, you know, pass the exam at the end of that. You can send round competitive charts of leg regs passers. I used to publish passers. I used to publish the score they'd got. I used to say things like, oh, look, the L'Oreal team, they've all got it. How are you guys in Microsoft doing? And, you know, get a spirit of friendly competition going. Also, I think that team PAs are your friend. Something that I know a number of agencies have done in the past, certainly Gus used to do it at Zenith many years ago, is he would get the PAs to basically be on top of people filling in diaries. And then there would be, every quarter, he would give champagne to the PA who'd got the most number of diaries complete. Old school, but works. Okay.
Yep, so everyone's going to be celebrating the festive season soon, and everyone at the IPA wants you to be doing that too. The last thing they want is you working on your submission on Christmas Day. That wouldn't be fun for anyone. So do enjoy the festive season, but before then, what we wanted to do is get you to do a little exercise to think about what you've achieved so far and what you're proud of. So individually and privately as well, take a pen and paper, and I just want you to write down everything that you've done around CPD that you're proud of. We're sure there's lots and lots of things, but what are you especially proud of? So just take a few minutes to write those down individually, and then we're going to ask for a few examples to be shared. I saw you all writing down some things that you're proud of, and I think the next step is to let people in whatever business you work in know. They need to know what you're doing. So one thing you could do is to share your proud moments maybe with at least your teams, but if not the board, if you can have access to them. Let them know what's been achieved, what you're doing. Hopefully you'll get the recognition that you deserve if you haven't already from doing that. You can also add your kind of proud examples to your submission as well, depending on how you're writing your submission. It might fit in quite nicely to think that this is actually what I'm really, really proud of. If there's 3 things, this is what I can give myself a big pat on the back for. Also, if anyone's going for gold, then doing this sort of exercise it kind of forces you to actually take a step back and reflect for a little while about all the things that you've done, what you're really proud of, which I think if we don't give ourselves time to do that, we can sometimes kind of forget about those things, which would be a real shame if we're not shouting about them.
Thank you very much, Natalie. So, it's the first day back, and hopefully you've had a proper holiday. We would suggest the following tactics work. The first thing is you need to now get into trying to get them to open the emails that you're sending them. Gus Annetts always used to put free booze. He said that had a really, really good uptake, whereas I have to say my one, which was your New Year's resolution, didn't go down quite so well. But, as Jenny has said, what does go down really well is bribery. Yeah? So you're now definitely into bribery territory, in my opinion. So, for example, one of the things I used to do at McCann's and Universal McCann was I would send a note round to all the people who had not completed a CPD diary and put their appraisal date in and all the rest of it. And I would say I will be awarding chocolate to those who are ready. And so I'd go out and buy nice bars of chocolate, and ostentatiously I would walk round at 3 o'clock, which I said was the deadline, handing out chocolate. And of course lots of people would say, why don't I get chocolate? And I would say, well, if you would just spend 5 minutes, I will be back again at 5 o'clock. And it was remarkable the number of people between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. who actually went round to do it. Another thing that an agency I know of does is something called the Jolly Trolley. So they've taken it to a step further. They actually have alcohol. And you cannot have a drink unless you have a completed CPD diary. So, works very well apparently. One of the other things that I think is very important at this moment for those of us in creative agencies is, frankly, how difficult it was sometimes to get creatives inspired by CPD, because they would regard it as, CPD, what's that, HR. And so it's a very good idea to talk to them in their language. So instead of saying training, talk about what inspirational experiences have you had this year, and then move it on to how have they used learning. They will be much more interested in the words career coaching than in what you might want to talk about. There's all sorts of techniques to remind people to be sort of updating their diary, or your in-house method, screensavers. I've known people go around the whole agency and put post-it notes in last thing, so that when people come in first thing, there's a post-it note saying, just please do it now, blah, here is the link. There's all sorts of things that you can do. So that's the first day back. But week commencing the 6th of January, get the gloves off, it's time to stand over them. Yeah? You can still make this a positive experience. Something that Paul Burns always used to do at Saatchi's was the first week back, while he was sort of desperately trying to get everyone up to scrub, is he would actually take time with people. So instead of making it a rushed experience where he was standing next to them going, come on, you just do it now, just input it now, he would actually go and try and spend 10 minutes with each person who he was having trouble with, and talk to them about their learning experiences and how they had benefited from the investment that Saatchi's had made in them, and talk about what they might want for the future. And he said the levels of cooperation were obviously considerably greater the following year. People really began to understand that they had been invested in and could see that the learning had been useful for their careers. That's another example of the 80-20 rule. Looks like quite a lot of time, but actually paid back dividends, he felt. So, you're standing over them. Indra?
Well, if you have some good case study examples of legal mistakes being averted due to leg rec, then do share it with them, because that will inspire people. But there's a couple of facts I wanted to share with you. Well, only this year, in 2013, ASA had over 31,000 complaints, and out of them, 3,700 ads were either changed or sort of taken out of the circulation. Thank you. It was meant to do some of them down to legal mistakes. So that's great to know, I think. And I think not everyone of you would know that we LegRegs won a bronze in the e-learning award this year, which is really great. It's not only because of the content and the way the learning has been distributed. It's actually that it reaches the diverse and time-poor audience, which is your account director. So I think it's great. Yes, another point you kind of need to do this week is get a date in your diary for this your management, because as you know, their diaries actually get filled really fast. And again, keep reminding about the CPD diary.
You can't remind enough, basically. Just keep at it. But
yeah, week commencing 13th of January, so by this point you might have a little bit more sweat under the brow and be thinking, right, only 2 weeks till the deadline. I'd advise at this point to roll the sleeves up a bit if you haven't already, and actually not to take any stick from people. You don't really kind of have time to be taking stick anymore. So a few things that you could do. For people that don't have a complete diary, you could say, right, you can't claim back any expenses until you've completed it. No training if you haven't completed it. They're just two examples. But if you've got any more, please do share. But obviously there might have to be some sort of penalty that you introduce for people that don't complete their CPD diaries in order to try and motivate them to do that. I think it's also a good idea to do another report at this point as well. Just make sure who is it that hasn't done their CPD diary, so you know who to kind of target and tackle. It's also not a bad idea at this point as well to remind people of the investment that is being made or has been made in them and their training over the previous year. At AMV, we run quite a lot of different training initiatives, and I think people sometimes forget about actually how much is being offered to them. And I think their appreciation for the amount of training that is available to them declines. So it's not a bad thing to sometimes remind people of that investment that is being made to them. Also, remind people of what actually counts as CPD. There's so many things, and what we want to do now is hear a few examples from you, which Gwyn will then write up, on what counts for CPD. So I'll give you the first two. You've got training, you've got qualifications. Sure you all knew that already. But what else counts as CPD? What thoughts have you got?
Developing others.
Yes.
Developing others.
Good one. Yeah. What else counts?
Yeah, inductions. Either attending an induction or doing an induction for someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think appraisals, remember it's not only doing the actual appraisal, but it's actually preparing for it as well. That counts for CPD. Actually in the appraisal itself counts as CPD, but also if you're delivering appraisals for someone else, that also counts as CPD. So it's kind of three ways that CPD can contribute to appraisals. Any others?
Reading relevant books.
Yeah, reading relevant books, articles, anything that you can find. If it's something that's going to help inspire people for their jobs, then that's definitely something that can go on CPD.
With Creatives Week.
Yeah, definitely. So exhibitions, galleries, anything like that.
Listening to a guest speaker.
Listening to guest speakers, yeah. And also the guest speaker themselves, if they are within your kind of business, and that counts towards their CPD time.
What about mentoring, guys? Anyone got in-house mentoring programs? Yeah? Have you been publicising the industry's one-to-one mentoring? Remember, that's a fantastic resource for CPD managers, because all you need to do is publicise it, and then it's up to people if they take it up. But if they have taken it up, they've probably got an awful lot of hours of being mentored. Yeah, I think one of my frustrations with the, and I know why we do it, but one of my frustrations with the CPD diary is that, it asks you to put in a date. And sometimes you think, well, hang on a minute, actually this was over a kind of year's period or 3 months or something. And I'm being honest with you, I just put in an arbitrary date. Because it doesn't know, it's not intelligent. So if that's one of the things that people always used to complain to me about when I was standing over them. Oh, I can't, and they'd be looking through their diary, and being honest with you, I'd be standing there thinking, no, just put in anything. And I know that was mean of me, and I know we should try and do it accurately, but truth be told, I couldn't give a stuff. So what else, guys? Natalie's given you some good ideas.
Cross-agency sharing.
Brilliant. Lovely.
Something that I do, so I showed you my CPD kind of spreadsheet earlier, and obviously I'm able to put in anything that I'm aware of in that, but for example, one of you mentioned going to an exhibition or going to a gallery. I might not necessarily know that someone's gone and done that unless I have a conversation with that person or they let me know. So one thing that I've done, which has been really helpful this year, is linked CPD in with appraisals. So HR run the appraisals, and I say to them, right, once a date has been confirmed for an individual to have their appraisal, they all get sent this one-pager, which just basically documents what CPD is, why we need to track it, the fact that everyone needs to have at least 24 hours as well. And then I've just put lots and lots of examples of what counts as CPD. I've kind of broken it down into training courses and events, self-development or study, developing others, and then kind of a few other ideas. And the idea is that when someone has their appraisal, they come along having filled this in, which then very nicely comes to me onto my desk. And it's just another way that I'm using HR to kind of help me get that sort of data, which I might not necessarily get otherwise, just because there's so many people in the agency. It's just kind of too much to kind of keep track of if you're chasing over 400 people. So that's one idea that I've got, and maybe something that you want to consider doing as well.
Fantastic. Just want to add something to the what counts list. An awful lot of people have got permanent work placement arrangements. The people who organise that and mentor the work placement people could probably put in 300 hours without pausing for breath. Same with your graduates. As Jenny has said, developing others is an enormous resource, and some agencies are absolutely brilliant at it. I mean, they share so willingly. So really probe what it is that people have been doing to help others, and you'd be surprised how many hours you can automatically fill in. So we're getting into week of the 20th. This is the point, as Dawn Siller always says, when you give up on the conscripts. And really, you're starting to work now with your volunteers as you press on with the year. But I would suggest that with the conscripts, the people who just are totally unwilling, despite all of your best attempts and haven't bought into it, that you give up on them for now. You're not giving up on them permanently, but you're giving up on them for now, and you fill it in for them. This is not ideal because, for example, it asks for a rating. Is it thumbs up or thumbs down? But I think there's got to a point now where you need to be doing that because it's not fair to you. I do also think that you should press gang someone who's on work experience. It won't do them any harm to help you at all. This is all very good experience. They will learn a lot from this. And you should not have to do this all yourself. I mean, some of you are from agencies with hundreds of people. So keeping your, reports up to date is very, very difficult.
And the day comes when you have to submit your CPD submission. And here's how you get into it. So you just go again, training in CPD tab, submit my agency CPD. And that's what the page you'll get. So at the top, you'll see the progress bars for everyone in the agency who has completed their 24 hours, CPD hours, everyone who had their appraisals, and the last progress bar is for everyone who have completed legregs. The system, if you're using the IPA log system, won't let you to submit unless you have 90% into the first progress, so in 24 hours, and appraisals. However, the system is not as Gwyn said, is not as clever, so it still thinks that everyone, so that percentage you see for legregs is actually for everyone in your agency, so don't worry if it's only 8%, that probably is your number of account directors, in your agency. So you just tick whatever, you submit your strategic development plan, you tick whether you're using IPA system or not, tick all the other relevant boxes, choose your management who has signed this strategic development plan, and submit.
That's it, guys. This is obviously quite a key chart, so have you got any questions for us on you finally submitting? We are available, obviously, night and day to help you with this. So please, if you ever have any questions.
Yep, so I think with anything, always take a bit of time once you've done your CPD submission to actually reflect and think, okay, how did 2013 go? How did my submission go? And what can I do differently for the next year? We've got a few examples here of things that we can do. So actually have a training plan written to the strategic development plan model. This will ensure that any kind of training that happens is done for a reason and that it's tied up into those business objectives. Have a CEO rule maybe, so no appraisal without an up-to-date diary. Again, maybe have some rules like that or some others that really get people thinking, right, if I don't do this, then there's going to be a consequence of some sort. You can switch appraisals to anniversary of joining. One thing I would say about that is if appraisals happen at all times throughout the year, it can make planning your budget quite difficult. It's something that happens at AMV. Wish it didn't, but I have to be flexible because there's so many people. We can't have inductions happening all at one time in the year. Produce a laminated list at year end of every CPD activity. This will show exactly how much you're doing, how much is going on, will make people aware of what's going on, and again, hopefully you'll get the credit that you deserve. Build CPD into every induction. So the one example that I gave you earlier, I sit down with everyone in their first week, tell them what CPD is, or the IPA have an induction, which you can send people onto as well.
I think it's Anne-Marie at ipa.co.uk. I'll make sure I send that round. People come back to agencies raving about CPD, so she's doing a great job.
I think as well, get account managers studying the regs, or make a study day for them. What support can you give people to actually complete these certificates? I think as well, something that I'm going to look at for next year is in thinking, right, who is actually going to benefit from regs within the agency? It's not just account directors, there's account managers as well, but what other areas of the business will benefit from it, and really encourage those people to be completing it as well. And as Gwyn mentioned earlier, the commercial certificate, it's launched already, but it will become mandatory for account directors next year. So have a bit of a plan in place in terms of how you're going to get everyone to complete that. Something that I've done, so Colin, who's our finance director at AMV, he was quite instrumental in helping put the commercial certificate together. So he's like, come on Natalie, we need to be one of the first agencies to get people completing it. So one thing that I've done is I've spoken to the commercial team, the commercial managers, and they've actually set up some breakfast sessions at AMV to help the account directors actually complete those, the online learning and the qualification. So it's just maybe being a bit creative. Budgets aren't always very big, so it's thinking, well, what resources have I already got within the business that I can use and tap into to really kind of help waterfall those learnings. And also, I think it's a good idea to set yourself 3 things to improve. So I think if you do any more than 3, you're kind of taking on quite a lot, and you need to be realistic about what you can do differently. But 3 ideas is always a good thing to kind of focus on, I think.
So
good luck, everyone. We've hopefully given you lots of ideas and tips that you can take away and use either this year or for next year's submission. One thing that I did want to touch on that we haven't really spoken about is evaluation. So hopefully everyone's thinking about evaluation and including it in their submission. Hopefully everyone's heard of Kirkpatrick's 4-level evaluation. A few nods in the room. There's lots of information about Kirkpatrick on the internet. There's also online learning that the IPA kind of hold as well, so that's available to you. But just to kind of give you a quick overview of those different levels, the first level is reaction and the second level is learning. So that reaction and learning you can get straight away from a training program or a training session, mainly through the kind of feedback forms or the happy sheets, which I think we all kind of tend to do. A lot of people kind of leave it there though, and actually if you're trying to prove that what training you've done has had an impact longer term, then it's going to be really difficult for you to prove if you don't look at level 3 and 4. So level 3 and 4 is behaviour and results. So a few months down the line, whatever is appropriate for the programme or training that you're doing, think, okay, so what behaviour changes have resulted from that training that took place or that program that took place, and also what tangible results are there that I can see have been a result of that behaviour change. It can be quite tricky getting that sort of information. You can do it via a kind of online survey maybe that you kind of send to people. One thing that I've done this year, so our account management, everyone in account management attends a program at AMV. At the end of that program, I sent out a big email, basically, to the whole of account management saying, look, this is what I'm doing, CPD-wise, I'm doing it for the IPA. I want to hear any thoughts, any examples that you've got, any stories of where you have put into practice the learnings, but also what behaviours that you've seen as a result, what behaviour change, but also what tangible results you can take away from that behaviour change. Now I sent that to about 140 people and I got 1 response. It was a very good response, but it's not going to be enough for when I'm writing the CPD submission. So something that I've had to start doing now is really kind of targeting certain individuals that I know attended a program, and almost kind of the bribery that we've spoken about, saying, right, let me go and buy you a coffee and I'm going to pick your brains for 20 minutes just about what behaviour that you've seen, what behaviour changes have happened since that training and what results there have been. And if you let people know before that meeting that's the sort of thing that you're looking for, then at least they can have a think about it beforehand.
thank you so much,
That's
Natalie.
okay.
I'd just like to thank Natalie for all the work she's put into this. It's been really, really helpful.
That's right.